On the night of July 11, 2015, the most wanted drug lord on the planet stood in his cell at Altiplano Federal Prison, Mexico's highest security facility. Security cameras tracked his every move. Armed guards patrolled his cell block around the clock. He had been caught twice before and was serving a sentence meant to keep him locked away for life. At 8:52 in the evening, he walked behind a small partition wall in his cell. He bent down, and he disappeared. If you want to uncover more of the world's most daring criminal operations and true story mysteries, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It helps the channel grow. To understand how a man could vanish from an inescapable prison, you first have to understand who he was. His name was Joaquín Archibaldo Guzmán Loera. The world knew him as El Chapo, the short one, 5'6". And for more than 2 decades, he was the most powerful drug trafficker who has ever lived. He was born around 1957 in La Tuna, a tiny village in the mountains of Sinaloa. His family was desperately poor. The floor of their home was dirt. As a boy, he sold oranges on the roadside and dropped out of school in the 3rd grade. Beatings from his father were common. Poverty for the young Joaquín was not a hardship. It was the entire world. His father was a cattle rancher who also grew opium poppies. This corner of the Sierra Madre, spanning the states of Sinaloa, Durango, and Chihuahua, is known as the Golden Triangle. Here, growing drugs was not a crime. It was survival. Guzmán learned to cultivate poppies as a boy. And he learned something else too, that the mountains kept secrets, and that the men who controlled the drug trade controlled everything. As a young man, Guzmán left the mountains and was drawn into the world of professional trafficking. He was ambitious, meticulous, and ruthless. He joined the Guadalajara cartel, run by Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, the man they called the Godfather, who at the time controlled nearly all drug trafficking through Mexico. Under the Godfather, Guzmán learned the business from the inside. Then came the event that changed everything. In 1985, cartel members kidnapped, tortured, and murdered Enrique Camarena, an agent of the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. The killing brought down enormous pressure from the American government. Félix Gallardo was eventually arrested, and the Godfather divided his empire among his lieutenants. Guzmán was handed control of the Sinaloa corridor. He would build it into the most powerful cartel on earth. What set Guzmán apart from other traffickers was not violence. It was innovation. In 1989, his engineers built a tunnel beneath the border between Mexico and the United States, running from a home in Mexico to a warehouse in Arizona. It was the first of many. Guzmán did not just move drugs. He engineered a supply chain, and he earned a nickname that would follow him for the rest of his life: the Tunnel King. His methods became legendary. He smuggled cocaine inside cans of jalapeno peppers shipped by the trainload. He used fishing boats, tractor trailers, and even submarines. He built an organization that operated like a multinational corporation, with logistics, security, and its own communications network. By the early 1990s, Sinaloa product was flooding American cities. By the 2000s, the Sinaloa cartel controlled a vast share of the drugs entering the United States. Guzmán's personal fortune was estimated to exceed $1 billion. In 2009, Forbes magazine listed him among the most powerful people in the world, alongside presidents and titans of industry. A boy who once sold oranges on a mountain road now commanded a global empire. But this empire was built on blood. To control the trafficking routes, or plazas, the Sinaloa cartel fought vicious wars against rivals like the Tijuana and Juarez cartels, and later the Ultraviol and Zetas. Tens of thousands of people died in Mexico's drug wars. Entire towns lived in terror. Behind the myth of the clever Tunnel King was a trail of bodies stretching across the country. An empire like this could only run on one thing: corruption. Guzmán bribed police, soldiers, mayors, and officials at the highest levels of government. His organization's unofficial motto was brutally simple: plata o plomo, silver or lead. Take the bribe, or take the bullet. For countless officials across Mexico, it was not really a choice at all. The law first caught up with him in 1993. That May, a bloody shootout erupted at the airport in Guadalajara. In the chaos, a Catholic Cardinal, Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo, was shot and killed, allegedly caught in violence tied to the cartel wars. The death of a cardinal shocked the nation and unleashed a manhunt. Guzmán fled to Guatemala. Weeks later, he was arrested. Guzmán was extradited to Mexico and sentenced to more than 20 years in prison. He was sent to Puente Grande, a maximum security federal prison in the state of Jalisco. For most men, that would have been the end of the story. For El Chapo, it was only the beginning. Inside Puente Grande, Guzmán did not lose his power. He bought it back. He bribed guards, wardens, and cooks until the prison effectively belonged to him. Witnesses later described alcohol, feasts, and visitors smuggled in. He is said to have run his empire from behind bars and lived in comfort while officially serving his sentence. The prison held his body, but not his kingdom. Then, in 2001, Guzmán learned he might be extradited to the United States, where his money and influence would mean nothing. He decided it was time to leave. On January 19, 2001, El Chapo escaped from Puente Grande. According to the official account, he was wheeled out of the prison hidden inside a laundry cart, pushed through unlocked doors by a bribed employee, and driven away to freedom. Whether that story is entirely true or not, one fact is certain. He walked out, and he stayed out for 13 years. For the next 13 years, El Chapo was a ghost. He ran the Sinaloa cartel from hidden ranches deep in the Sierra Madre, protected by loyal locals, corrupt officials, and a private army. During those years of freedom, his power and his wealth only grew. In his home state, Guzmán became a folk legend. Ballads called narco corridos celebrated his cleverness and his defiance of the government. To some, he was a Robin Hood figure who built roads and churches in poor villages. But this myth hid a darker truth. The drugs that made him rich devastated communities on both sides of the border, and the violence he commanded destroyed countless lives. He also built a family and a legend around himself. In 2007, he married Emma Coronel Aspero, a former beauty queen less than half his age, in a lavish mountain wedding. He fathered many children. He seemed untouchable, a man who could marry in public celebration while the entire Mexican army searched for him. But the net was slowly beginning to close. For years, he evaded capture by staying one step ahead. He used an intricate network of safe houses connected by tunnels, some hidden beneath bathtubs that lifted on hydraulic lifts to reveal escape routes into the city's storm drains. When soldiers raided one house, he would drop into the darkness and surface somewhere else. The tunnels that built his empire were now protecting his freedom. Then, on February 22, 2014, his luck ran out. Mexican Marines, working with the United States Drug Enforcement Administration and following months of intercepted communications, tracked him to a beachfront condominium in the resort city of Mazatlan. They stormed the building at dawn and captured him without firing a single shot. After 13 years, the world's most wanted man was back in custody. This time, Mexico was determined to hold him. He was sent to Altiplano, officially the Federal Center for Social Readaptation No. 1. It was Mexico's most secure prison, built specifically to hold the most dangerous inmates in the country. After the humiliation of 2001, the Mexican government staked its credibility on one promise: El Chapo would never escape again. The security around him was extraordinary. His cell was monitored by cameras 24 hours a day. He wore an electronic bracelet that tracked his location. Armed guards conducted random checks. There were more than 700 cameras across the facility and dozens of guards assigned to his block alone. Nothing, it seemed, could move without being seen. But there was one blind spot. To protect the dignity of inmates, prison cameras were not permitted to show the shower and toilet area directly. In El Chapo's cell, there was a small partition wall, roughly 1.5 meters high, that shielded the shower from the camera's view. It was the one place in the entire facility where he could not be seen. And that is exactly where the plan began. While El Chapo sat in his cell, something extraordinary was being built beneath the ground. For over a year, a team of engineers and miners had been constructing a tunnel. Not a crude escape hole, a masterpiece of underground engineering. It began inside a half-built house on farmland more than a mile from the prison, and it ran directly toward one point on the map: El Chapo's shower stall. The operation required real expertise. Investigators later believed the cartel sent engineers abroad for training and purchased specialized equipment specifically for the project. This was not a desperate scramble with shovels. It was a planned, financed professional construction effort, carried out in total secrecy over many months, while the man it was built for waited patiently in his cell. How did they know exactly where to dig? Investigators believe El Chapo's engineers used the very tracking he was forced to wear against the people who put it there. By pinpointing his location and combining it with the prison's blueprints, they could aim the tunnel with astonishing precision at a target 10 meters underground and over a mile away. They missed by almost nothing. The tunnel itself was a feat of engineering. It was 1.7 meters tall and about 70 centimeters wide, just large enough to walk through upright. It was reinforced with timber and hydraulic supports to prevent collapse. It had electric lighting, ventilation ducts to supply fresh air, and PVC piping to drain groundwater. It was in effect a hidden underground railway built for a single passenger, and running along the floor of the tunnel were steel rails, carrying a modified motorcycle rigged to the track. The bike had been adapted to run on the rails and could carry El Chapo the full 1.5 kilometers at speed, so that his escape would take not hours but minutes. It may also have been used to haul away the enormous quantity of earth removed during construction. The construction took over a year. Workers excavated an estimated 3,000 tons of earth, laboring in shifts around the clock. Above ground, the half-built house served as the perfect cover. The dirt was hauled away in trucks that looked like ordinary construction vehicles. The noise of building work masked the digging below. Neighbors saw only an unfinished home. No one suspected a thing. At the prison end, the tunnel rose the final 10 meters and terminated directly beneath the shower area of El Chapo's cell. The last breach was cut through the concrete floor, creating an opening roughly 50 centimeters square, just large enough for a man to drop through. It was hidden beneath a raised section of the shower floor that lifted like a trapdoor, the tiles matching perfectly when closed. It is almost impossible to imagine that a tunnel like this could be dug beneath the most secure prison in Mexico without anyone hearing or knowing. Drilling 10 meters below a prison cell produces noise and vibration, yet no alarm was raised. To this day, questions remain about how much the people guarding El Chapo truly knew, and how many of them had been paid to know nothing at all. At 8:52 in the evening on July 11, 2015, the prison's cameras recorded El Chapo walking behind his shower partition, as he had done many times before. He sat on the edge of the shower to change his shoes. Then he bent down, lifted the floor section, and dropped into the darkness. On the security footage, there is simply a man and then an empty cell. Below the floor, the escape became a ride. El Chapo climbed onto the modified motorcycle mounted on the rails. The engine started, and he was carried down the full length of the tunnel at speed, 1.5 kilometers through the earth. The man who had spent his life building tunnels was now escaping through the most ambitious one he had ever commissioned. He emerged from the tunnel inside the half-built house on the farmland. A vehicle was waiting. El Chapo changed his clothes, climbed in, and vanished into the Mexican night. From the moment he stepped behind the partition to the moment he was gone, the whole escape had taken, at most, a matter of minutes. Inside the prison, the guards had noticed nothing. It was only after some 20 minutes had passed, when El Chapo failed to reappear from behind the partition, that a guard finally entered the cell. He found the running shower, the small hole in the floor, and the tunnel below. The alarm was raised at last. But by then, the most wanted man in the world was already gone. The escape was a global humiliation for Mexico. The nation's president was traveling abroad when the news broke. The prison's director was fired, and dozens of officials and guards were arrested and investigated. Once again, El Chapo had proven that no wall, no camera, and no government could hold him. The message was unmistakable. His reach extended even into the country's most secure prison. What followed was the largest manhunt in modern Mexican history. Military helicopters swept the Sierra Madre. Soldiers rappelled into mountain clearings. Roadblocks choked the highways. The United States offered its full resources, embarrassed that a man they wanted extradited had slipped away yet again. But the mountains that had hidden El Chapo for 13 years hid him once more. But this time El Chapo made a mistake, and it came from an unlikely source, his own vanity. While in hiding, he became fascinated with the idea of a film about his life. Through intermediaries, he arranged a secret meeting with the American actor Sean Penn and the Mexican actress Kate Del Castillo. In October 2015, they traveled to one of his mountain hideouts, and Guzmán gave a filmed interview. The interview was later published in Rolling Stone magazine, causing an international sensation. But arranging that meeting had required communication, phones, and messages, and all of it left a trail. Mexican authorities were watching. Contacts used to set up the interview helped intelligence agencies zero in on his location in the mountains of Sinaloa. The man who could not be found had drawn a map straight to his door. On January 8, 2016, 6 months after the escape, Mexican Marines raided a safe house in the city of Los Mochis, Sinaloa. A fierce gunfight erupted, 5 cartel members were killed and 1 Marine was wounded. But El Chapo was not going to be taken easily. As the Marines fought their way in, he was already slipping away through the building itself. True to form, the safe house had a hidden escape route. Behind a mirror that swung open on hinges lay a passage down into the city's storm drain system. El Chapo dropped into the sewers and fled through the tunnels beneath Los Mochis, emerging onto a street some distance away. Even now, cornered by the military, he was still running through tunnels. But there would be no third great escape. Marines tracked his movements, and when he surfaced and commandeered a vehicle on the highway, he was intercepted and captured. This time, the Mexican government took no chances. They understood that as long as El Chapo remained on Mexican soil, no prison could truly hold him. So they made a decision that would end his reign for good. In January 2017, El Chapo was extradited to the United States, beyond the reach of the corruption and the tunnels that had freed him twice before. He was flown to New York to face justice in a country where his billions could buy nothing. For the first time in his life, Joaquín Guzmán was somewhere his power could not follow. In November 2018, El Chapo went on trial in a federal courthouse in Brooklyn, New York. Security was unprecedented. Each day he was driven across a bridge that was shut down entirely for his transport. The jury was kept anonymous and under armed guard, their identities hidden even from the court, out of fear of the cartel's reach. For 11 weeks, prosecutors laid out a staggering case built on the testimony of more than 50 witnesses, many of them former associates who had once been among his closest allies. They described tons of cocaine moved by train, boat, and submarine, and a personal fortune built on the addiction and violence of millions of people. The testimony was extraordinary. Witnesses described a diamond-encrusted pistol engraved with his initials and acts of shocking personal brutality. In one explosive claim, a witness alleged that Guzmán had paid a massive bribe to a Mexican president, an allegation that was firmly denied. Whether every claim was true or not, the picture painted was of a man who believed himself untouchable. On February 12, 2019, after 6 days of deliberation, the jury found Joaquín Guzmán guilty on all 10 counts against him, including operating a continuing criminal enterprise, drug trafficking, money laundering, and weapons offenses. After decades of eluding justice, the Tunnel King had finally run out of tunnels. In July 2019, El Chapo was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years, along with an order to forfeit $12.6 billion. He was sent to ADX Florence in Colorado, the most secure federal prison in the United States, a place so isolated it is called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. There are no shower partitions to hide behind here, and there is no tunnel. Inside ADX Florence, El Chapo lives in near total isolation, confined to a small concrete cell for the vast majority of each day, with minimal human contact. His lawyers have complained about the harshness of the conditions. For a man who once commanded a global empire and roamed the mountains as a king, it is the ultimate reversal. A life measured out in a windowless room he will almost certainly never leave. But removing one man did not end the empire. The Sinaloa cartel did not collapse. It was inherited by his sons, known collectively as Los Chapitos, and by his old partner, Ismael Zambada, known as El Mayo, the quiet strategist who had never spent a day in prison. The organization adapted and, in many ways, grew even more dangerous. The cartel moved into a new and far deadlier product, fentanyl, a synthetic opioid dozens of times more potent than heroin, cheap to produce and easy to smuggle. It has driven an overdose crisis that kills tens of thousands of people every year in the United States alone. El Chapo may be locked away forever, but the machine he built keeps running, and the death toll keeps climbing. And the story took another astonishing turn. In July 2024, El Mayo Zambada, the co-founder who had evaded capture for decades, was arrested in the United States, allegedly lured onto a plane by one of El Chapo's own sons. The betrayal ignited a violent war within the Sinaloa cartel itself, as the factions of Los Chapitos and El Mayo turned their guns on each other. The empire El Chapo built is now tearing itself apart. El Chapo's Tunnel Escape remains one of the most audacious prison breaks in history. 1.5 kilometers long, 10 meters deep, over a year to build, 3,000 tons of earth removed, one modified motorcycle on rails, one hole in a shower floor. The estimated cost of construction was several $1,000,000. The time it took him to disappear, only a few minutes. It raises an uncomfortable question. How does a prisoner, watched by hundreds of cameras and tracked by an electronic bracelet, receive a 1.5 kilometer tunnel drilled to within centimeters of his cell without a single official noticing? The tunnel was a feat of engineering, but the silence around it was a feat of corruption. And that corruption did not go away when El Chapo did. El Chapo will likely die in an American concrete cell, but his true legacy is not the tunnels, or the escapes, or even the billions. It is a system he perfected, a machine of corruption, engineering, and violence so effective that removing its architect changed almost nothing. The drugs still flow, the bodies still fall, and somewhere in the mountains of Sinaloa, another poor child is watching and learning that this is the only road to power. He built the most secure prison in Mexico. He built a tunnel underneath it. Some people, it turns out, cannot be contained by walls alone, only by an ocean and a country that finally refused to look away. If you enjoyed this look inside the world's most impossible escape, hit the like button, subscribe to Frond, and check out our other deep dive episodes. See you in the next one.